Hello, it's Wendy here from Indigo Blue Team with another little project. I thought I'd have another play in this small journal that we made ages ago on one of the retreats. It's just a 6x6, so it's nice for a quick project. I'm going to try something that I'm not sure I've tried before, a different sort of technique. And the first thing I need to do is to get some scraps of paper down on this journal page as my background, so I'm going to get on and do that in a minute. I'm only using one stamp set today, and it's one of the animal ones, this spike with the hedgehog and the toadstool and the sentiment that says take the path less travelled. So I've already stamped and embossed and cut those out for later, so I'll just put those to one side, and I'll be using some vivids to add a bit of colour to the background when I've got the paper on. So let's make a start. I'm going, whoops, that's non-flying. I'm going to use Slap It On Matte to adhere some scraps to that page, and I've got my tearing ruler to hand in case I want to add some torn edges to some of the pieces. So I've pulled out a few bits from my scrap box, and we'll see how we go. I'll start sticking down, and it might be that I speed up because I'm not sure you want to see everything in real time, but we'll just take a check on how things go. So I haven't got any particular plan about how these are going down, but I'm going to put some Slap It On Matte on the actual piece and put some on the page itself. And one last piece. Watch views. There we are. Anything that's hanging off the end I can just trim off later. Okay, so the technique that I'd seen uses clear gesso over the top in order to get a slightly different effect. What I'm going to do later is use some vivids to colour over the top. Now normally if I'd just stuck that down, I would have thought that the ink would sort of soak in, if you like, to the paper, although it's got a coating of Slap It On the top. So I'm going to let that dry, and I might use a test piece actually. Yeah, that's something that I'll do. So I'm just going to put that to one side to dry, and then I'm going to use this as a test. So I'll put the Slap It On this because that's the top layer that I've got on my journal page, and see how that works. And then I'm going to put Slap It On here, and then I'll put clear gesso on here when that's dry to see if there's any difference in the take up of the colour. So there's a bit too much probably on there. So there's my two sort of experiment pieces, if you like. So I'm going to stop the video there and let everything dry, and I'll be back to you shortly. We're back with the next bit of our experiment to see how we get on with these. I put gesso, no, I put Slap It On matte on both of these, and I'm going to put gesso on one of them so that we can see how the colour from the Vivid Inks later takes up. So I'm just going to put some clear gesso on here. And see if that gives it a different kind of grounding to just having the Slap It On matte on. So there we are, we'll leave that to dry and come back in a few minutes. These are now dry, my test pieces, so a moment of truth. I'm going to put some Vivid Inks on and see which effect I like best. So just to remind ourselves, this one has just got Slap It On matte over the top. This one has got a Slap It On matte and clear gesso. So let's see if there's a difference. I've got my Vivid Inks here in my palette ready to go, and we'll just colour. I'm not looking for anything sort of in particular on here, just to see how they go. See, that moves nice and easily, which is good. And I'll have some of the Will Scarlet on there as well. So I haven't watered these down at all. I'm just putting them on and see what effects we've got. It's quite nice, we can still see the text behind. And see if this looks any different. So that's probably grabbing the ink a bit more. It's not flowing as well. Is it a fair test because it's not the same kind of paper? I suppose it depends what effect you're kind of looking for. I like the way that this sort of is holding on to the ink a bit more. So I might go with putting some gesso on everything and see what happens. I'll just clean that off. It's just playing, it's just a little bit of I wonder what if. So I am going to put some clear gesso on the top of this. I think it's dry enough. So clear gesso. It seems to have just that little bit more tooth to it than just leaving it with the Slap It On matte, which is a great sealant. But I want to put another layer of a medium on top of that, in this case the ink. Okay, so there we are, we've got a good layer of clear gesso on there now. And hopefully that won't take too long to dry. Back to our page that's now dry. It's had the gesso put on the top, and I've got my palette with the Vivids in. The colours I've put out are, I think this one is, obviously it's green, it's Robin Hood. We've got Will Scarlet. That one is Sheriff of Nottingham, that's the black. I put it in the old space where the brown was, so it looks as though it's brown, but it is actually black. And here we've got Little John, and we've got Alan Adale, Loxley Yellow, Friar Tuck and Original Oak, which is the brown. So I'm just going to paint this page basically and get some colour on and see what it looks like. Just in patches here, and let it blend together. need some of that Oxley yellow freshened, so I've got the green on my brush, and that's muddied it a little bit, which wasn't what I wanted, but that's okay. There we go, that's a bit more yellow. And we can see all the text paper below looking good. Green and yellow just mix together really nicely to create different shades. Knock that back with a bit of yellow. It's a bit bluey for my liking. And I'll come up there with a bit of the orange. There we are. I'll put that to one side to dry, and while that's drying we'll bring in our stamped images. There's a bit of run going on there which I'm quite liking, so I'll just encourage that a little bit and then just dab off the stuff that's coming out a bit brown. There we are. Alright, let's just get rid of these splashes. For the stamped images, I'm still going to use some of the Vivids where they're appropriate, but I've also got some paint out for the hedgehog. I've got clotted cream, I've got some warm tan, and I've got some hot cocoa. You can see how old this is. It's in the old packaging. So I'm going to start with a little bit of hot cocoa, no, warm tan and the clotted cream around Spike's face. Let's get a slightly smaller brush. Here we are. So I'll just put a little bit of this out on my mat. I don't need a lot. And warm tan. A little bit of the darker just around the edge. And some of the clotted cream at the front of its snout. We've got hedgehogs in our garden. They've been back from hibernating for a good few weeks now, but it is always good to see them. We get 2 or 3 quite regularly on an evening at the time of year when they're starting to think about mating. They don't make a noise, really snuffly, and they sort of circle around each other and nudge each other. It's quite fun to watch. There we are. Just blend that dark in a bit more there. And we'll bring in some of the hot cocoa. And then here on its body, we'll just do a few strokes of this, which will blend in with the black ink, and we'll put some of the lighter colour in as well. That's going in with a bit of the warm tan. There we are. And I might just go around the edge with a watery bit of that warm tan, just to take that whiteness off the edge where it's too spiky for really accurate fussy cutting. Just to take the whiteness off, and here around its whiskers. Okay, there's the hedgehog, and now for the toadstool. Alright, I'm going to use Vivids for this, so I shall come in with, I think, the scarlet for the very top of the mushroom on the cap, the bit there that you can see. And same on this one. I've got some of the brown. I'm going to mix it with a bit of the yellow maybe for the gills. There's so much detail on this stamp that there's not such a lot to take the colour, but it's just a hint of it I might like a little bit of clotted cream I've got on my mat here. I was just picking up a little bit of that inky. Yeah. Just to give it a slightly lighter underside. There we are. And on here, can you see I've cut this? I think I've talked about this before on one of my videos where I actually cut through the image in order to get to that isolated bit of white space that you don't want, and to weed that out. Because I know that when I stick that, can you see if I hold it sideways? I don't know. When I stick this back onto my project, you won't even notice that that's been cut, but it does make it look better for not having that white space. There we are. And I think the stalks, I'm going to come in first of all with the clotted cream. It's got a little bit of the original oak ink in it, so it's giving it a nice bit of colour. Take that right down to the base. And then I just want some kind of a hint of green really around these plants. Some of that original oak along the very bottom to ground it a bit. And I think I'll use the same sort of watered down clotted cream just around the edges here, again just to take that whiteness off. And just a tiny little bit of the original oak over this shading just to give it a bit of depth and dimension down there. So that's the hedgehog done, it's the mushrooms done, and then I've got my sentiment here, take the path less travelled, and I don't know what I might do there. I might just, I'll leave that for the time being and see how it looks. So move those paints to one side. Let's see if this is dry enough to stick on, possibly not quite. I might just give that a blast with the gun. Here we go. don't really like that. I don't think it goes. So I might save that background for something else. See what else I've got that I can substitute in its place. I always have a bunch. I also have a bunch of tags and things that I've cut from either excess background paper or things that I've done. So here's a similar thing but without the colour on. No, it doesn't stand out enough, does it? So I'm wanting something that's got a less busy background. And I think I've got a tag somewhere that's like a brayer clean up piece. Here we go. That might work. So here's the final project. It took a while to get here, starting out thinking that we were going to be using this stamp set, Spike, and turning out to use Frida, but I think it's okay how it's worked out. I coloured Frida in using some of the similar paints that we'd used for the hedgehog, so clotted cream and warm tan for her face, and the palette of vivids that we'd got out for the rest of it. The sentiment comes from Mike Deakin's journal phrases, and I've just gone around the edge with a Stabilo oil pencil just to give it a little bit of depth, a sort of a shadow, and make her stand out. So all in all, quite an experiment, but it's crafting. There's nothing rehearsed about it. I started with one idea, not really a thought out plan, but what I was hoping to do didn't work. But I'm happy with the way that's turned out, and I've got all these bits ready for another project that I'll have another think about and see how we can incorporate those. Thank you for watching, and if you've stuck with it right to the end, well done, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, bye.